Can you hear me? Um, yeah. So, for example, if I say, "Oh, um, I need to save some images in AWS," which service will you recommend me to use if there's a need to maybe store some images or some, let's say, some movies? Who can tell me which service I should likely use? Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So I'll likely need to use S3 bucket if I need to store. Um, yeah, that's fine. Um, let's say somebody comes and say, "Oh, um, I would like to to know." Let's say we have an S3 bucket, and somebody says, "I would like to perform some automation." Immediately, something is uploaded into the S3 bucket. How would you go about something like this? Or somebody comes and say, "Oh, I need to host a website in AWS." Um, what services will come to mind? Let's say I need to host a website based on what you guys have done in assignment 3. What services might you suggest that I use? Oh, are you there? Can you hear me? You can type in the chat here. Okay, well, that's a good question. Um, if it's static or dynamic website, I think that's a good question. But let's say, I mean, pretty much these days now, any website you can build the website and have like the static assets. So let's say it's a static website. Where would you suggest I host it in AWS? Which service shall I use? Feel free to put some messages in the chat. Oh, can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? So if you assume it's a static website, would you suggest I where would you suggest I host it? Is it EC2 or S3 or where? Yeah, that's yeah. If it's a static website, then you can host it on S3 bucket. You can host it on EC2, but it will be a lot more expensive. So S3 is a better um choice in this regard. Um, Now what if I say, oh, I need to I have some scripts that I need to run. So let's say I have a Python script, for example, and I need to run that Python script in AWS. Which service would come to your mind if I need to host it in AWS? You can unmute yourself and speak, or maybe type. So, how many of us read about Lambda functions? Was it part of the third assignment about Lambda function? I think there was a whole list of it. hmm So, if you want to run some scripts now, you need to use a Lambda function. You need to use a Lambda function to run it. Yeah, let me see. Yeah, so you need to use a Lambda function. I think I have some Lambda functions here. Okay, so I don't have any Lambda function at the moment. So let's just do a quick example. Um, hmm. So yesterday you guys learned about CLI and Terraform, right? You guys learned about CLI and Terraform yesterday. I think Victor must have explained that there are two ways to create something in AWS. Either you do it manually via the console, which is what I'm going to show. Sorry, just stop recording. Um, so to do the, let's say I need to create a Lambda function. The AWS console is pretty much self-explanatory. The AWS console is pretty much self-explanatory. So if you need to create any, let's say for example, I need to create a Lambda function, you can click on the create function button, and then there it gives me three options. Either I can create it from scratch, or I can use a blueprint, I can use a container image. But I'm just going to demonstrate, this create from scratch option. So I just give my Lambda function a name. Let's say we'll call it my Lambda function. Now you need to tell it what kind of code you want. If it's a Python code, I think you can select Python here. Then this architecture, so there are basically two kinds of architecture. So for example, for those of us who have Windows, you'll either see, or you most likely see, a 32-bit or a 64-bit Windows. So this is similar to like 64-bit. And yeah, one more thing. So you know how we said 2 weeks ago, like IAM is for giving permissions, right? So anything you create in AWS, you need to provide, permissions for it. So I'll just leave this one as default, I'll leave all these other bits as default. I'll just create the lambda function. Oh, okay, so the lambda function is creating now. Okay, so the lambda function is created. I just need to tell it the code that it needs to run. Yeah, so back to lambda function. So you can see it's just put a sample code for me. Whatever. Say if I say print, let's say print hello world. If you click on deploy, it saves the code. And then I think if I click on test, let's say I know I'm just doing random things, but I'll create an assignment that'll help us, put all these together. Anyway, so if I click on test now, more people. Yeah, Victor, I'm just showing them lambda functions. So I think if I click on test, yeah, okay, it just returned. Wait, let me go back to the code. Oh, okay, so I think I should have just copied them. We can use this one as well. So if I deploy the code to save it, so if I click on test, it will trigger the lambda function. And then you can see, brilliant. You can see it just print something out. So that's the lambda function executed. Um, yeah, so that's pretty much it. I think the best way to learn would be to come up with several scenarios, and then we can build something that you guys can, you know, can remember. And then yeah, I'm not sure we'll be able to, because we still have all these other bits, and there's a project at the end as well. So this is where I'll try and make an AWS, login available, and then you guys can start building, some real stuff. So let me just continue anyway. So that's Lambda. If I need to create something in S3, so I'm just going to go to S3 now. I have a bucket I've already created, but if you need to store something in S3, you need to, create bucket. Can just leave the type as general purpose and give it a name. My testing bucket. It's important for you guys to know. Oh, sorry, just 1 minute. So you give the bucket a name. So bucket, you need to name it like very uniquely. So two buckets cannot have the same name. So they need to be unique names. So this setting is quite important. If you want the bucket to be completely private, you have to ensure this is ticked. And we are going to disable bucket versioning. Or we're just going to click on create bucket. Oh, so you can see it says, oh, okay, so it doesn't like underscore. Let me put dash. Okay, so it's allowing me to create the bucket now. And then you can upload, stuff you want into the bucket. If you click on upload, you can, so you can add files. It will take you, you select a file by, if I select that file, for example, yeah, so once it's happy, I just click on upload and it will just upload the file. So if I go back to bucket, yeah, so this is my testing bucket and this is the file. If I need to see the file, I can download the file, or if I have enough permissions, I should be able to open the file. Yeah, so this is just the file here. So yeah, so that's like, is there any questions so far? Or is everything good? Okay, so I'll assume everything is good. Um, yes, I'll continue. Um, Now, so let's talk about EC2. Sorry. By the way, let me just quickly go back to S3 for a bit. So let's talk about, yes. Sorry, let me quickly go back to S3 for a minute. So if I try to delete this bucket, I think there's a delete button here. You can see it complains that the bucket is not empty. So what I need to first of all do is to empty the bucket. Yeah, then we'll ask you to confirm, you know. Oh, sorry, to confirm, so type and permanently delete. I'm just gonna copy and paste that. Then, because the bucket is empty now, I can delete it. Yeah, so it allowed me to delete the bucket now. So I just have only one bucket. So if I go to Victor, you showed them EC2 yesterday, right? Oh, VPC. Fit inside the VPC. Okay, so I'm just gonna cover that bit now. Um, so this EC2 is like your um, is your, you know how we have WSL, like how you have like a, your Windows laptop, for example. So that's what this EC2 is. So I can create a Linux, EC2. I can create a Windows EC2. I can create a Mac, you know, EC2. So Victor already showed us VPC, right? So if I go to, so let's just go to VPC. So the VPC is the private network. So let's just see what I have. Okay, yeah, so I don't have any VPC here, and that's because I've deleted all of them. So I'm just gonna create a new network, private network. So I'm just gonna create well, let's see what this one is. Okay, this is an interesting one. Maybe I'll create this one. Yeah, yeah, so so this is one you created yesterday. Um okay, um so I think this diagram is quite helpful. So the VPC is the private network, right? And so that network is usually a very large network. And then we'll have to chop the network into smaller networks or smaller VPCs, if you like. So, which is what is called these subnets. So you can see it's a sub network. The main network is the VPC. Then we chop it into these four subnets. Um, Yeah, so you have the big VPC. You have this subnet. It's just a way to split the VPCs into chunks, and then you have this route. The route is like a passage, or a road, that connects all these small chunks together. And then you have okay, yeah, network connection. So for example, this IGW that you see is called the Internet Gateway, and is like a front door from the VPC, to the rest of the world via the internet. And then what else do you have? Then you have this VPCE. These are like endpoints. So basically, what the endpoint is if someone is outside the VPC and they need to have access to something inside the VPC, then one way to provide them access is to create an endpoint on the VPC. So if you remember, the VPC is virtual private network. It's a private network, which means anybody outside the VPC, cannot access whatever that is inside. So if you need to give external, entities, or whatever they may be, access to your VPC, there are two ways to do it. Either you create a VPC endpoint if you make your VPC private, or you can add, you know, access to the internet, and then people can reach your VPC, and anything inside the VPC can also reach the internet. So let me see. Um, so I'll just continue. I think this is quite a good. Let's see my network. Um, then I think you guys read about slider blocks or slider ranges. I think that was in week 2. So I'm just gonna give it. I think I'll accept this default range here. So there's no IPv6 tenancy. I'll just leave it as default. If I just leave it as 2, yeah. So there's something called availability zone. So within each subnet, um, within each subnet. So the availability zone is like a way to categorize the subnet such that AWS can 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 make resources available to you. So, for example, if you put all your resources in one availability zone, then that design is not highly available, because if anything happens to that, availability zone, then the whole of your implementation just becomes unavailable. So it's always good to design something across, availability zones. But I think as part of this training, I'll try and see how I can make cloud practitioner. So cloud practitioner is the first AWS certification. So I'll see how I can make like a practice material available, so that way you can learn a lot more about VPC, subnet, availability zone, and that will help you guys catch up a bit. So I'm not going to deploy any NAT gateways, but NAT gateways are a kind of device that allows instances in private subnet to be able to reach the internet. So remember, any VPC you create is by default private, and if you want your resources to be able to to you know, make calls to the internet, then you will need to either deploy them in a public subnet, or you deploy them in a private subnet, and then you deploy NAT gateways as well. Yes, I'm just going to scroll down. It looks like everything is good. I'll just press and create. So it's just going to create, all these things for me. The VPC, the routes, yeah, so it looks like, yeah, that's good. So let me just view VPCs. So if I go to your VPC, yeah, so this is the VPC here. So it gives you like a VPC ID. So the VPC is available. Let me click in the VPC. So you can see there are 4 subnets, and those subnets are smaller chunks of the VPC. So if I need to create a Linux instance now, if I go to EC2, if I go to EC2, I can just click on launch an instance. Sorry, just one moment. So let's just call this one my EC2. Now you can see how it's asking me for application and OS, so Amazon machine image. So when you create an EC2, you need an Amazon machine image. It's just a way for AWS to know how you want it to create an EC2. So if I want to create a Linux EC2, so let me just take this first one. You can see Amazon Linux. So this is Amazon's version of a Linux system. So that's the Amazon machine image. That's the architecture, 64-bit. Um, what else? What else? What else? What else? Um, so you need to choose an instance type. So there are various instance types. Oh, was. Yeah. Okay. Yes, it is. I'm sorry, my. So let me just you can only start with T2 micro. It's just a very small instance type. So you can see the network, that was the VPC that we created earlier, I think 321. There you can see it's called my network VPC. So what else? Um, so that's the subnet. It's just taking one of those subnets that we created earlier. So if I duplicate this page, so I'll just go to VPC on one page. I'm just gonna go to VPC. Yeah, my laptop is a bit slow. Okay, so let's go to subnet. Oh. So you can see the subnet 2D2, blah blah blah. Let's see what we have here. Yeah, and you can edit this to select, if I don't want that subnet, I can select any of these. It will still work. So this one is quite important. So if I want the EC2 to have a public IP, then I can just enable public IP. So what that means is anybody will be able to reach the EC2, based on this public IP. Yeah, what else? Security group, I'll just leave it as is, but security group is like a guard on your EC2. So if you want to restrict, how people connect to your EC2, then you need to do that via the security group. And so I'm just going to leave it open. So which means anybody can interact with this EC2. Let's see. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Then you remember how, I mean, you know how your laptop, always have like SSD hard drive or HDD hard drive. Same thing applies to EC2s as well. So I'm just going to configure it with like 8 GB of hard drive. Then there's something I need to show you guys here. Um, so you can see this instance type here is T2 micro, right? So you can see here is 1 vCPU and 1 GB memory. So this is quite a small machine. You can see the memory is small, 1 GB, and the processor, the virtual CPU is like, just one. So this is quite a small machine. So I'm just going to launch only one of the instances, but if you need to launch multiple instances, you can change the number here to 2, but I'm just going to launch only one. Then one important bit you should know here is, oh, where is it? Sorry, I'm looking for it, I'm coming. So is this concept called key pair. So this key pair is used for logging in. So the key pair is, and I think we're going to touch on that maybe next week. I think when we create SSH keys, we'll be able to see, what a key pair might look like. But anyway, this key pair is like a key. So the instance will hold one part of the key. Then I will need to download the other part of the key pair. So that's why it's called the key pair. So there are two parts to it. So the instance is going to have one part, then I need to have the second part. So I'm just going to create. No, I'm not. So I'm just going to create a key pair. Yeah, don't mind. I'll create, this one. I'll just leave it as default. Create the. Oh, so let's say my key pair. Oh, so my key pair. Oh, so just create this key pair. So you can see it's downloaded this key pair for me. So I have the second part. The first part is with the instance now. So I'm just going to click on launch instance. So it's creating the the EC2 for me. Okay, so that's fine. So I'll just go to instances. Yeah, so he's creating the EC2, so he's still in the pending stage. So I'm just gonna wait for it to complete. In the meantime, is there any question? Is there any question? Okay, so look like there's no question. So you can see it's running now, so it looks like it's all, oh yeah, it's almost time. I think we have, yeah, we have about 15 minutes more. So I'm just gonna quickly wrap this up. Oh, yeah, so it looks like the EC2 is up and running now. So I'm just gonna click on connect. So there are various ways to connect. So let me connect using this public IP. Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm just gonna try and. I'm just gonna try and connect. Let's try this one. Oh, this one is not working. So I'm gonna try and connect again. I'm just trying to connect to the instance. Oh, yeah, it's not allowing me to connect. Okay. Yeah. So let me try and connect through another means. So I'll try SSH client. Um, so I need to connect. So I need to connect them via SSH. Let's see. It's been a long time. I think we'll do SSH next week. I thought I'll be able to connect to this thing online, but um, so sorry, I'm just gonna I'm just gonna cancel this one, close this one. Let me see if I can connect via SSH. So I have all these things going on. Yeah, I'm just waiting for my terminal to prepare. I think it's called SSH. Wait, minus I. So I'm just trying to see if I can connect. Let me just try and connect. Yes, so I'm in now. So can you see how I'm in now? So can you see I'm already inside the Linux system? So you can see the name of my user is EC2 user, and you can see the IP 10.0.22.232. So if I go back to the console, so you can see that the private IP address is the same, and that's why I have here as well. So that's it. And if I do ls minus al, so you can see if I do pwd, I'm already in /home/ ec2 user. If I cd to slash and I type so let's say pwd, I'm on slash. If I type ls minus al, so we can see I'm back into the same Linux file system, which we've seen on our WSL. You can see the /mount, you can see /home /etc, you can see /var /usr. And yes, I think that's pretty much it. So you can see how you can get a Linux system, on AWS. But obviously that Linux system, is costing money by, I think you have to pay by the hour. So I'm just gonna shut everything down. And the way to shut it down is by going to instance and pressing terminate. And I just terminate the instance. So you can see it's shutting down. And then I'll just try and clean up everything. If I go to VPC, so if I go to VPC, I'm just gonna delete, all the stuff I've created. Let me see if this one deletes the whole thing. So I need to go and delete all these other things I created. And yeah, but that's about it anyways. So before I can delete the VPC, I need to go and delete all these other things I created. Yes, I think that's it for today's class. Yeah, so detach from VPC. So I'm just cleaning up now. of these resources, they are quite expensive. Yeah, so does anyone have any questions? Any questions so far? Is there any questions so far? Oh, no questions. Okay. Um, yeah. So that's it. Yeah. I think we'll stop here for today. But when we, yeah. So I think this gate will have to be next week. So I think we'll extend the training by maybe 1 or 2 weeks, and then the last week will be the capstone project, where you know I'll come up with projects, and I think so far it looks like 3 or 4 people, you know, have been consistent during the class. So I'm just gonna have like one capstone project, that all of you will work on. So the project is gonna be a bit heavy, and I'll try and get you guys to use mostly serverless you know services to deliver the project. And then yeah, so I think that's it. So I'll put an assignment in for this week. Then we'll try and do Git, because the project will like you guys to do it via Terraform as well. Instead of going to the console to click, 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 you guys will have to write it via Terraform. And then you need to put the code in the GitHub repository. And that will be it, ladies and gentlemen. No, it has to be teamwork. Yeah, it's not individual. Yes, it's going to be teamwork, not individual. So you guys will work as a team. You guys will split the work, and then each person can pick, which part of the project they want to deliver. Alright, so I'll see you guys next week then. Alright, yeah, take care. Alright, yeah, bye bye.